Good morning. How are you all today? Thank you for joining me once again for Mind Your Business. Today, I'm very excited to be inviting my cousin. Her name is Kimberly J. Oliver, and she is a minister, and she is a recent author. She authored the book called 101 God-Given Kimfrimations. It's a book of inspirational and motivational quotes. She is also the host of the Facebook Live Singles Ministry, Lifestyles of the Saved and Single, which broadcasts bi-weekly on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Kimberly has both facilitated and been the keynote speaker for several young people's women's and single ministry conferences. And most of all, she's a woman of God who believes firmly that everyone is important in the kingdom of God. So today, I am so excited because she is a very sweet person, very kind heart, and I know how much. And I'm so excited to have her here. So, without any other further ado, I'm gonna welcome her to our show. Hi.
Good morning.
Hi. I know.
Good morning.
I've got a little bit of an echo. And I don't know why. So I'm gonna try. I'm gonna plug these earphones in and see if that helps a little bit, okay?
All right.
Is that better?
Much better.
Okay. All right. Yay. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm well rested and ready to go. I'm so excited to be able to be a guest on your show. Not only are you my cousin, but you're also an amazing individual in and out of that.
Well, God bless you. And I mean, I just know the same thing about you. Your spirit is so beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I do everything that I do just for the goodness of the Lord and his people. I love God's people, and I believe that just innate in me is that everybody should be treated equally and everybody should be treated fairly, and we should, treat each other with the love of God at all times, no matter what the situation.
You're absolutely right. We have the same spirit, the same heart. I want to start off by talking about how you got in the ministry, because I believe around 15 years old or so, you answered your call.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes. So, I come from, our family, long line history on both sides of my family. Both of my parents on both sides are, I guess, I'm fourth generation apostolic Pentecostal. So it kind of runs in the family. It would be very hard to get away from it. I did try to run from it. I did try to see who I was outside of Christ. That didn't work. And around 15 years old, maybe a little before, I knew that I was called to the ministry, but I didn't know what to do with it because, the models that I saw before me were so great and they seemed like they were so powerful and just something that I didn't see myself being able to attain that level. So I shied away from it, thinking that it was something I couldn't do. I stayed in the background for years. And someone told me, a very powerful prophet in the kingdom told me, and around my early 20s, that I was not called to the background as much as I wanted to be there, that I was called to the forefront and that I needed to own it and that I needed to know that I could do that with Christ. So I think a lot of times people think of things that they can do in and of themselves and not realizing that you're doing it with Christ. It's not you. You were trying to do it. It's not going to happen. But because you're doing it with him, you could take each little step. You could step out there. So I answered the call in 2003 when I was 30, like officially answered it. And then I still kind of wandered around a little bit and went around the mulberry bush, and but I ended up there, and I realized a lot of the things I was doing before I was officially licensed or officially had a title or anything like that. I was still doing the work of the Lord without a title. And I think that's what a lot of people fail to recognize, is that you could do so many things without a title. For some reason, when people put a title on something, it now names it, it identifies it, it marks it, and then people start to look for certain things because you have this certain title. And if you don't live up to it, it's even more detrimental.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I myself don't like titles at all. And I'm not ordained yet. I'll be ordained next year after I graduate. So in 10 months, and then our next conference, I'll be getting ordained. But it's funny whenever I go anywhere and people are like saying things like that. I'm like, yeah, just come with the Lord. And you don't have to identify me like that. And then someone told me, they say, well, you know, you were called to this, so you need to own what it is. And I said, well, the only thing I'm called to do is serve. And so, you know, if it's not the word of God, if it's not the word of God in me, then I can't speak for it. I can't speak for it. So.
Yes, I echo those sentiments wholeheartedly. You know, it's this type of thing that what you said is, we're servants. You know, there's chief servants and there's, you know, different levels of servanthood, but at the end of the day, we're servants. And I've never seen where servants go around looking for these titles. And you know, I think a lot of times we get caught up in titles. There's nothing wrong with it, and they have their place, and there's different ranks and there's different levels. But I think some people get so caught up in titles, which will lead me to a couple of quotes from my book. But I do have a quote from my book that says, "Don't settle for a title that makes you compromise your position." And that didn't come easy to me. It's not like that was something that popped into my head, but I was seeing it more and more where, you know, people have all these titles, but whatever that title is that someone gives you, if you don't live up to it and it makes you compromise your position or your stance in Christ, then I don't think you should take it.
Absolutely. And you know,
anything like that.
Yeah, you know when your heart will convict you if you're not walking in the right way as well. And you know, and God will set you down. And nobody has to tell you so. But you just exude so much light and so much energy, and I can just feel how sweet you are. I mean, from the very first time that I met you, I could just tell that God was all in you. And so I just want to talk about your ministry a little bit, just like what you do in the ministry, who you serve in the ministry, and why you are drawn to what you do.
Definitely. So I try to label, quote unquote, my ministry. And I always say, you know, my core motto for my ministry is from patience to perfection in Him, taken from James 1. And what I said that was, you know, there's a lot of patience and there's a lot of long suffering in ministry or anything, you know, just being a child of God. There's a lot of patience involved. And I had to work on my patience. You know, I tend to be a very patient person, but it's hard. It's hard. My nature is to be very patient, but then it gets hard. It's like, why am I waiting? Why is this taking so long? And so when I read James 1 and it talks about, you know, it's patience to perfection, but it's all in Christ. So I took that on as a ministry motto back in 2014, and I've really been trying to live at that core and at that level in anything that I do in ministry. So I am an associate minister at my church, and, you know, I do various speaking engagements, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too. Is I used to be a very shy person, not around my friends, but in public. I could barely read a scripture. And so people who see me now and they see me preaching and teaching and conferences and things like that, and they're shocked that I have a Facebook Live ministry because I barely wanted to read the scripture. I was so frightened I would mess it up and I wouldn't read it correctly and somebody was going to judge me for it. And I think that also Facebook too, and we'll talk about that later. I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's a lot of weight that is put on the way people are treated in the church. Judgmental, self-righteousness. And so there's all these labels of, all these images and these things that you're supposed to be because somebody else labeled it. But you really have to live at the core level of who you are in Christ and working on knowing who you are and what your gifts are. I'm an artist. I'm also an architectural engineer by trade. So I often wondered, how do I fit that into church? Me drawing and things like that. So back in, the late 90s and the early, Y2K genre, there were no Facebook, Instagram, none of that stuff existed. So the ways that I wanted to communicate was the ways that we are now, Facebook Live, and I love this StreamYard now and Zoom and all those types of things. That didn't exist. So I often wondered, well, where do I fit? I used to do, and I still do, I do flyers and posters and all those types of things. And I didn't have an avenue and I didn't have a platform, but now there's all these platforms. So, I grew into it. I was patient back then when those things didn't exist. And, you don't get noticed with any of those things. It's kind of, again, it's like a background ministry, but it set me up for being able to just launch and just jump out here and do these types of things now where, 20 years ago, I would have been in a corner somewhere. I would have been one of the people who would have come on somebody's Facebook Live and barely written a comment because I wouldn't want them to call me out. But now I don't care.
Absolutely. And I can so understand and relate to what you're saying because it was hard for me to walk into my call because of I wasn't brought up in a household that we were in ministry like that. Although we do come from a ministry background, it was totally the opposite. And so being around my friends and being around my family and my mom, she's always like, you're always preaching, and and she made it sound like it was a bad thing. Like, and I was like, well, I'm just trying to tell people to do the right thing. And I haven't always done the right thing. I've always done the wrong thing. But I just was like, if I go and tell somebody, they're gonna look at me like I'm crazy, and I knew that we were spiritually connected and we were supposed to be in ministry together. But I told him, I go, you are called to speak for God. You are called to speak for God. And I thought to myself that I'm supposed to be I'm not supposed to be the preacher's wife. I'm just going to have to go along with that because
yes.
They didn't really believe that women should be in the pulpit. And so, I struggled a lot. And so I was scared thinking that when I tell him about this call, God showed me something. He told me that if you trust me, it's bad. You can't hear me. Okay. All right. Let's see. Is that a little better? Hold on just a second. I'm going to see if I can fix this, okay?
All right. No problem.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Much better.
I feel like that's better.
Okay.
All right. And so when I actually answered my call, he and I both answered our call. And we didn't even know that it was going to happen. And it was just so the way that it happened. I was like, you better not wait another second. I told her and Holy Spirit talked to me. And just the way that everything was set up. And so when I go down to answer my call, I look at the minister and I say, 10 minutes for them too. And they look at me and they go, he knows. And he didn't even know we were married. He just said he knows. And I turned around and he goes, I'll turn around. And and when he came up and he held my hand, at that point I knew what our ministry was. Our ministry is reconciliation, to bring families back together, to bring husbands and wives together, to reconcile for the Christ. And so And that was before I met you. And then when I met you, I was just like, oh my God. You know, when I heard you in your car, so young, I just was young. I go, God, why didn't I just go, God, trust me, and I didn't just talk in that call? Because like you said, I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to be talked about, but I don't care. This is the best feeling. This is the best feeling.
It is.
So I'm elated right now. So I'm thankful to share that with you as well. Because I know our grandmother, great grandmother Carrie, your grandmother Carrie, and her mother Clara.
Yes.
In church, and so we got another cousin, her husband are in ministry together. We're going to be on the show today to talk about marriage and
Yay!
ministry. So we
that's great.
So we want to go ahead and talk to us about your background.
Sure. So, and I'm looking forward to. I see all the wonderful things that you and your husband do, and you can just see the both of you just exude so much care and compassion for, you know, the married couples and couples, and which is why I ended up taking the stance with singles. And so I spent a lot of years, you know, I'm single, I've never been married, I don't have children. And I spent a ton of years, I'm going to say 10 to probably 15 years in this area of, you know, singleness, but I was begrudging it and I was hating it and I was upset and I was angry. Didn't even realize that I was angry. And then when it came to the point that it was affecting, you know, my walk with the Lord, where it was like coming to a crossroads, because I was sitting there going, why can't I, you know, why am I not married? Or, you know, why am I not engaged? And why am I not in whatever kind of relationship? And so I didn't realize that it ended up going into an area of just being angry and begrudging people and you know, jealousy and all of those things that people don't like to talk about, and people like to act like it doesn't exist, but it does. You can't help it if, you know, you see everybody around you having the things that you want and you don't have it. And so I spent all that time, and, you know, God had to heal me of it. And I had to go through some things, and I had to cry, and I had to moan. And I also went through a period of, and we'll get to that in the book, but I went to a period of 2 years where I wasn't working. So when the market was down and everything in 2009, so from 2009, July of 2009 until September of 2011, I wasn't working. I was looking for a job every single day, going on interviews. Nothing was happening for me. And I was kind of at like what I would call my all-time low. But I had to look to God. God provided for me. And I said, if I get out of this, and I know people always say that, Lord, if you do this for me, I will never do that, you know, X, Y, and Z. But I really meant it, because that was such a humbling experience for me. And the things that people said and the things that people did to you and the way people looked at you and the way people talked to you because of a situation that you're in, I hadn't really experienced it on that level, you know, that magnitude. And so going through that led me up to today. So I'm looking at myself now in 2020, which, you know, a lot of people are complaining about, you know, 2020 was supposed to be my year and now it's not, you know, and all of that. But wherever it is and whatever it is, God has us here for this season. The quote that I say, and I talked about it the other night on my singles live show, is people always say, my season is coming. My season is around the corner. My season is up the street. No, your season is right now. Your season is already here. You just have to accept it, move in it, and walk in it. So my singles ministry came about on Valentine's Day of 2017. So I had been doing Facebook Lives. You know, I would pop on here and there in like 2016 when it, you know, came out and started to be big. And I said, well, you know, why don't I come on for Valentine's Day? Because I feel that, you know, there are a lot of singles that are saved out there, you know, Christians in the church who are single, and maybe they don't have anything to do this Valentine's night. maybe I should come on and just talk to them and see if there's anybody out there that felt the way that I did. And I was astonished because that first night, like I said, 3.5 years ago, so many people came on and people started writing me and they said, oh, I think I said I was going to do like a part 2. Then when I came on that time, and I said, okay, well, I'll come on the next week. And God kept saying, no, you need to come on every Tuesday. This is needed. This is needful. And I was, started getting all these, like I said, emails and phone calls and texts, and people wanted to come on and people thanking me because it was out of obedience that I decided to come on, because I could have just said, no, God, that's not you saying that. I don't need to talk to singles. It's probably, some people would tell me, oh, it's just a bunch of lonely people coming on because, they don't have anything better to do and they're sorry. And so what happened was God started to download and pour into me a ministry and the heart and the compassion for single and saved people, because we count too. A lot of times you go to churches or you be in organizations where, they really just don't talk about single people. It's kind of like an afterthought. It's oh, we got the power couples and the marriages and all of those things are well and good. And that's something that I attain to, and I want to, that's what I aspire to be, but I can't make that happen. So I can't go out there and grab somebody, marry them and make it happen. I have to wait for God. So again, it goes back to the patience, the long suffering, the forbearing, and all of those things. So I continually came on, and it just started to grow exponentially. It started getting shared and reshared. And so it kind of became this little like phenomenon buzz. And, I started doing conferences, and, they weren't large, they weren't huge. Some of the conferences had 25, 30 people, but it was 25 or 30 people who I felt really mattered. And just because it wasn't 2,500 people does not mean that you're not doing anything. So I want to tell people out there, and, anybody who's listening and anybody who's listening after, and these things are shared, I want to tell you, do not think just because something is small that it doesn't count. People will make you feel like if 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 people weren't there, 2,000 or 5,000, 10,000 people aren't following you or liking your things or loving your things or caring about it, that it doesn't count. You are only called sometimes to that 1 or 2 people. Absolutely. And if you don't complete your assignment in God, if God told you, I need you to speak to these 2 people, and you're worried about, well, God, why isn't it 10,000 people? And you don't speak to those 2 people, it's the same as somebody who didn't speak to the 10,000. So you have to be about obedience. What did God tell you? He didn't tell you the same thing he told me. So I've been walking in obedience with that singles ministry. Now I come on I come on the 2nd and the 4th Tuesday nights at 8:00 Eastern time. And we bring relevant programming. We talk about all sorts of subjects. And I have tons of married people on there. I have, they come on in support of their single family and friends, in support of their ministries and their businesses. And so it's just a great place. It's like a big group therapy session for church people on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday nights. It's not even always about singleness at all. I definitely do, portray that, and we definitely do talk about those things and the things that we go through. But I wanted to see, and I just don't always see that out there. I wanted to see a singles ministry that meets people where they are. Some singles ministry, it's all about trying to get somebody married. It's all about trying to hook you up. And I wanted a singles ministry for me, because today, at this time, I'm not married. So I don't always want to hear about how-to steps and, when is it going to happen? And I don't want to hear about that. I'm right now as a single person. Love me at that stage where I am right now. And then we can talk and we can move on, because it makes people feel that they're either unworthy, they're less than. A lot of times singles, especially in the church, struggle with feeling like they're not good enough. They don't measure up. They're constantly, either being fixed up by people. People grab something off the street and say, oh, you want to go out with him? I mean, I couldn't even tell you. I don't even want to go into that. But their need for, pitying you just goes, to the 9th degree.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, you're single. I feel so bad for you. And really what it is usually that person is struggling with something. And that person could be married. But typically they're struggling with something. They're missing something in their life. So they're trying to fulfill it through you. And I tell my single and saved friends on Lifestyles of the Saved and the Single all the time. Do not be what someone else called you. Be who you are in Christ. That person's perception of you, that person's view of you has nothing to do with God's view of you and who he called you to be. And I would tell anybody, that's not even for, just single people, but a lot of times single people, it pertains to them because they do struggle with it, I feel, a little bit more because they're always constantly trying to be married, constantly trying to be in a relationship, trying to make things work, trying to put things together and fit things into places that they just don't fit. You're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't work. So just let God do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you said that because my thing is on the other spectrum as far as having children. Because me and my husband were married for like 10 years.
10 years.
We were together for 10 years. We were together for 10 years. Any children appeared in our life. People would say, "Oh, when are you gonna have a baby? What are you waiting on? You don't like kids."
Yeah.
And my whole thought when I first got married was, I need to know my husband, and he needs to know me. We need to have a bond. We need to have a bond before anybody else into the picture. Before they come and after their goal, it's going to be us. And so, then I was gifted with these beautiful children. Now we come into places, and I'm thinking, oh, kids are a joy, and everybody's going to be excited. And so I walk in somewhere, and here is all those are your kids. I'm going to pray for you. Oh, let me pray for you. And I'm like, why do you need to pray for me? I'm blessed. This is a blessing because God had gifted me with one child. And apparently I did something right. Apparently now I got 5 more of them. So, and without pain and labor of going through getting them, but it's been some pain and labor, but not that kind.
Yes.
And my desire is to have a baby, but hey, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Sarah was 90, and I pray that I'm not 90 and God decides to drop a baby in me. But whatever it is, I'll take it on. I'll do that, but I don't need you to pray for me or feel sorry for me or think that I'm a poor soul because or I'm broken or something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing wrong with me. God had other plans, and I'm fulfilling the plans that He had. Because if I would have had children already, the children that needed to come to me, I may not have had room for. And so I'm grateful that I was able, my husband and myself were able to do what we did, and that's a ministry within itself. Before we can leave the church, we got to get this family in order, and I see that, and I get it. And so ministry is not just in the church, it's not just in the pulpit, and a lot of people think preaching is the preacher, and spreading the word of God is the preacher. No, we are all supposed to be equipped. And the saints aren't being equipped anymore. And so when I see people who really have a joy for the Lord and who really want to do what they're called to do, that makes me excited, and I want to talk to them. And that's why I started this platform. There's so many people out there that have a voice that is not being heard. And a lot of times people think you got to have a name to be able to get a point across. And a lot of times I would hide myself back and say, hey, nobody's going to listen to what I have to say. It's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying. It's not coming from me. It's coming from what God is doing. And it's the scripture. And if I'm not talking to you about scripture, then that's just Tanika. And I'm not preaching or trying to spread the word. that point anyway. I'm just being myself. But when God gives me a word, I'm going to do what he calls me to do. So I applaud you for making that ministry, because sometimes when there's not a place for us, we got to make a place for us. And so that's special, because there was somebody else sitting out there needing and wanting the same things that you were going through, and you were able to step up and bring that to the forefront. So that's a blessing for a lot of people. And like you said, even married couples. I've been in your group, and I've been there when you first had started out and was watching you, and I'm like, I love what you're doing. You just have so much charisma, and the way you talk to people and handle them is just beautiful.
Well, I thank you, and I feel exactly the same way about you. We're definitely kindred spirits, just because, like you just said, it's different ministries, but it's the same values. So it's, you may be dealing with families, and I'm dealing with single people, but it's the same values. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the same things. We're talking about the same God. And so you can apply those principles on any platform. And, any platform that I come from and that you come from, we know that we're going to be talking about the same things. It's those core values and principles that are in us and that are innate uniquely to us. And when you get into those stages, and God puts you on more and more platforms. So like you said, I really can, relate to what you're saying about, having the children and not necessarily having them naturally, but they're still your children. And that Absolutely. Is a ministry in itself. And you have 5 beautiful children and a family. How anyone could not see anything but good from that, I don't understand it. And like I said, I think it really goes back to that person. A lot of times people are struggling and dealing with things. They will not ever reveal it to you. They're dealing with it, and they will put it on you, and they will put it to you and tell you all these horrible things and all these horrible things that are going to happen to you. And you'll never be this. You'll never be that. Why aren't you like so-and-so? There's this whole comparison game that is really a trick of the enemy. This comparison of she has this, I don't, he has this, I don't. Why don't you have what she has? Why don't you do it like she does it? And those things are really don't have a place, I feel, in the kingdom of God at all for any ministry. Single, married, young, old, skinny, fat, dark, light, black, white. It has no place in the kingdom.
Yes. Well, you know what? I'm just excited right now because I know that I follow you, I read your posts, and I see the things that you say, and I mean, it's just so very inspirational. And so when you came out with the book, I was like, oh, I mean, because you just give me so much inspiration to just be like, this is who God created us to be. Do what you're called to do. And so, do you have a copy of the book that you can hold up and show everybody and tell us about it?
I do.
All right. No, put it on stuff. Yeah, there you go. That is beautiful. I applaud you.
Yes. So this book is I have to just take a moment, because it was actually 6 years ago God told me you were going to write a book. And I had several thousand million different titles that the book was going to be. But one of it was really hard for me to pick a favorite, but one of my all-time favorite quotes, and anyone who's watching out there, anyone in my family and my friends that are watching right now or watch it later, know that my favorite quote is, I may not be high up on your chain, but I'm linked to God. And that actually stands above. And that was going to be the title of my book. It's probably going to be the title of some other book I'm going to write, because I plan to write more. And that was going to be the title. And that really, really, to me, sums up any level that you're at, any, like we talked about the platform. So that really sums up any platform: church, work, ministry, family life. You always have these people that feel that, so-and-so is high up on the chain. And, someone, I have to share this. So I had an experience, and it wasn't at church. It was a corporate setting. And I had gone up to talk to a speaker. And so the speaker had come to some conference, and I'll leave it at that. And I wanted to talk to them. So there was a line and people talking to them. And someone literally, I'll use the word, they trumped me. And what I mean by that is I got ready to shake the person's hand and have a conversation. And I got the hand in my face, and I got, oh, here's someone I really want you to meet. And I'm standing there. And this other person is put in my face and positioned to speak and meet to the person. And I just said, wow. Now, I had already had this quote before this happened, but it happens on so many levels in so many different ways. So it happens sometimes in person, sometimes it's in writing, sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's not even spoken, it's body language, it's gestures. And you can tell there are these certain people that people put up on a pedestal. And then once that person is up on that pedestal, no one can reach it. You can jump up and you can do all these things. You can try to build a bridge and a ladder. You're never going to get there. And they never let you forget it. But yet, we're all supposed to be linked to God. So if you think of a chain link, and you think of all the different rungs and the rings, and it's all connected. It's not broken. It's all one piece. So how can you say you're higher up on the chain when it's really a circle when you look at it? If you're not hanging it and dangling, because if you're hanging it, dangling it like that, that means it's broken. It's not a chain that's connected. So we don't want to talk about a broken chain. So if the chain is not connected, yeah, then you can be high up there and I can have a little low chain down here. I mean, a little low ring down the bottom. But that's not how a real chain is supposed to be. So I try to walk in that everywhere I go, every day. If I'm in the grocery store, I think about it. I may not be high up on your chain, but I'm linked to God. I'm in the mall. I may not be high up on your chain, but I'm linked to God. In the church, where there's, certain maybe big name people or somebody's got some title that everybody reveres and esteems, and then someone else is sitting in the pew, a lay person, they are just as good because we're all linked to God.
You are certainly right. And I've seen it so many times as well. And it's so funny because I laugh and I go, well, I made a video one day and I was laughing because I said to myself, I was just walking and I said, wagons are a drag. And I mean, bandwagons are a drag. Don't get on the bandwagon. And so I made a video about it and I said, what's wrong with people? Why are people so caught up in themselves and so self-serving and all of this? And I said, get on the happy train. Because when this train takes off, ain't no wagons gonna be dragging, so you can't get on the wagon at that time. So, for those who laughed or shunned me or decided they didn't have time to hear anything I had to say or I wasn't good enough or, they even said Jesus was Mary and Joseph's child. He's a carpenter, but he came to save your life, and so I know what God sent me here to do, so it's on you if you can't discern that. But, I just try to stay humble and wait till it's my time. And it's all good because we know when God prepares the table, good things are about to happen.
Yes, many good things. I love the dragon wagon. I love that. I love that. That's a book all in itself. That is its own book.
I'm telling you.
That is its
I got
own
so
book.
many. I got so many. We'll have to talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Can you read? Can you read a little bit of your book to us?
Sure. So I picked out a couple of my favorites, and then I also took a poll back in May when the book first came out. Actually, came out in April, but around May, people were starting to get it. The buzz was out there, and the most popular one, which I thought was hilarious, is I had this one, and it was a while ago. It was probably about 5 years ago, and it said, "You dropped me like a hot potato, but God picked me and turned me into golden fries. I did not think that would be the one, but like 30 people chose that one. So
wow,
that's a very and you know, I couldn't write something like that if I didn't experience that myself. You know, people will drop you all the time. They stop liking you for whatever reason, they move on to somebody better, or someone they feel is better or richer, smarter, cuter, prettier, whatever, and they just move on, or more anointed than you, or, you know, has a bigger following than you, and they want to be behind whatever, you know, the person who has all these people following them and running behind them, and you are just like little nobody over here. So they drop you. And when I say that, it's not, you know, I know it's not a literal drop, but it feels like that. When people start ghosting you, and people that used to be your friend or used to talk to you, all of a sudden, like, they walk by, you see them with this new like group of people, and it's like, well, what did I do? Like, what happened? Like, I didn't change. And I always, that's something that God has put down in me, and a gifting that he's given, you know, like I said, uniquely to me, is that I never change. I literally see people on the train and they remember me from nursery school. And I had this experience a few years ago. I was on the train, and a friend of mine from nursery school, her mother was sitting across from me, and she's like, "You're Kimberly Oliver, aren't you?" She's like, "You have not changed your spirit, your countenance, your face." And this was like probably 35 years later, you know, like I was probably around 40. I was like 5 when she remembered me. So that says something. And I used to be upset about it and say, oh, you know, all these other people, they changed, they moved here, they did this, they did all these great things. But there's something to be said about consistency. There is definitely something to be said about consistency. And I talked about the patience and the long suffering. It has benefits. It has benefits, because there's some people, they've been all over the place, and they look like they've been all over the place too. Not that I don't love to travel and be all over the place, because I am a person, I'm always gone. But literally and figuratively speaking, they look like they've been all over the place too. So, you know, God's keeping power and his loving kindness is, you know, what really keeps us going. And, you know, those times when somebody drops you like a hot potato, just remember, God picked you up and turned you into some golden, delicious fries.
All right. That's a good one.
The other one I picked up was love is not a status, it's a state of mind. And that one came from my singles ministry. And we were talking about and taking a look at, I had a conference that was entitled, You Are Not Your Status. And we talked about, we delved into it. We took a deep dive into what is it that makes us feel that we are whatever our status is. And so, you know, our status could be married, our status could be single, our status could be, it's complicated, its status could be widow, it could be divorced, it could be whatever. Single, you know, with kids, single with no kids, whatever it is, you know, rich, poor, credit score. You know, we have so many things that try to define us, and they're not necessarily things that really matter at the end of the day. They don't always matter. But we take it so seriously and so literally, and we get all caught up in it. But when you think about it, love is not a status.
No.
Love is your state of mind. It is who you are and what you do. And it is definitely demonstrative. It is not, you know, sometimes, you know, what you say, and I say this and I say that. You can say that all day. But if you're not doing it and you're not walking in it, it doesn't really mean a thing. So again, love is not a status. It's not something that you're trying to reach. You know, I want to be at this status, and that's love. No, love is your state of mind.
Well, again, we are kindred spirits because I teach mindfulness. And one of the things that I really believe being mindful is you have to love yourself. And so again, God first, love yourself, love your neighbor. But if you don't have a relationship with God, you don't know how to love yourself, then you can't love others. And so again, your mind has to be in the right state. And so that's what I try to help people to understand. Jesus came for the renewing of our mind. And once your mind is renewed, you will be transformed in Christ and you'll be made new. And you can think on a higher level, and you will have self-love, and that will exude within you, and people will draw to you. And when God says, draw nearer to me, and he'll draw nearer to you. And so when you do that, others will want to be in your presence. And the ones that don't want to be in your presence is because they know their spirit is not right, and you can discern that. And I've learned that. I used to feel some type of way, but now I realize that, oh, okay, you ain't right. And it's okay. It's okay. But when you are right, I'm gonna still love you anyways, because like you said, I haven't changed. I can call people on the telephone from elementary school that I haven't seen, and they'll be like, Tamika, is this you? I mean, because I still have the same voice, I still have the same face, and I've been through a lot, but God has kept me. And the same with you. I mean, you keep talking about these 40s, and nobody believes that you're in your 40s, and that's because you walk in a light that just shows the goodness that's inside you. And people wonder why they look so hard and ran down. And it's because God ain't guiding their life. And that's just true.
That is the total truth. As the teens say, that's the whole truth. And I could not agree with you more. I really couldn't. And I love this ministry that you have, Your Full Mind Life. I mean, it's just beautiful the way that you're helping people and coaching people and guiding them and steering them to, the way of Christ, and a mindful way to live our lives, and it's helping people, it's for the betterment of God's people. And that is always, always good. Always.
Yeah, and it's only what you do through Christ will last, and I understand that. And it took me a long time to actually, like I said, walk in that ministry, because I was afraid that people weren't gonna accept it. And I even had a coach one time that told me, if you're gonna do this, you need to take God out of it. And I'm like, then I did not do it, because if God can't be in it.
Yeah.
And so when I really got the concept, I was invited to teach a class. And so I went in and teach the class, and they told me before I got there, don't mention God. Because they knew, and I was like, okay, whatever. And so I said, I'm going to show y'all something, and y'all never have to invite me back again. And it's hilarious, because when I got there, I said, I introduced myself, and I said, but before I speak, I'm going to pray and ask the Lord to guide me in what I need to say, to make sure that I get the right words out, so you can understand what you need to take with you today. And it was about time management, and so yeah. And when I got done, I had a lot of feedback. They asked questions, but the facilitator called me up and said, we just want to give you some feedback, and we think you did a good job, but we asked you not to bring God, and and I was like, well, that's okay. Wherever God can't go, I don't want to be there. And I said, so it's okay, because I'll be back one day, and I'll be able to tell the story. But guess what? I had a meeting in that same building the other day. It's hilarious, because as I left, I just was laughing and saying, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't realize I was going to be back this soon. But here I am, and things are totally different. And it's okay, because when God opens doors for you, no man can close them. So don't be afraid to walk through them. Don't be afraid if they kick you out. That's okay. You don't need to be there. You don't need to be there. And so I'm just thankful that we had this time, and it's starting to wrap up. So I want to get to know some more. But what I want to ask you right now, what would 12-year-old Kim tell this Kim, and vice versa?
Okay, so I'll start with the 12-year-old Kimberly would tell the now Kimberly to remember that funny side of myself, to remember to laugh more, remember to be that spunky, funny person that people wanted to be around, and that, the neighborhood kid that all the kids were at my house, and to continue with the pursuit of architecture and continue to draw, and not feel weird about you like to draw more than read, because what ended up happening, I would never think that I would have a book, because I used to choose drawing over reading. And I didn't want it to be a problem, and I wanted to please everybody, and I knew that reading is fundamental, and reading is something that is definitely, you've got to do it, and you've got to, and I wish that I had done more of it. But my spirit and who I was and who I still am is an artist. So the way I got my creativity out, and people now realize that, through, science and more things, it's just a newer time, and, things evolve. And people now understand that a lot of the same fundamental things that you use, parts of your brain to draw and do art, are just as good as reading. It's just different. So I would tell that 12-year-old self, never lose that. Don't lose that fun side. Don't become bitter and angry because you don't have something that someone else has. And you go to your teenage years and you start this whole, comparison thing again, and, who looks better, and your body's changing, you're changing, you're kind of figuring out who you are. I would tell that 12-year-old self right now, don't even get involved with that stuff, because it's a waste of time. So I guess if I could go back, being where I am now, maybe I wished I would have done some of those things when I was, 12 and coming up, and not maybe have been so shy. But at the same time, I think I had to be that person in order to be who I am now. So if I had not had the experience of being the shy background person, and I probably wouldn't appreciate being on this other side now, and, owning the fact that I am an extrovert. People looking at me who weren't my friends or my family, had no idea that I was an extrovert, because I would show up in a room and I would immediately go to the back, because I assumed that no one wanted me there. No one cared that I was there. And so let me sit in the back, let me go in the back and do something, like we always joke and say, the man behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz, one of my favorite movies. And he's behind that curtain and people don't know what he's doing. And I'm not saying that you have to always tell everybody what you're doing and you have to always be out in the forefront. But if God called you to that forefront, you can't be disobedient and not go to it, because then, you're in disobedience, which is not a good thing. And if he called you to it, he's going to make the way. There's a reason why you're there. And I think about that often now. If I was that same person that I was like 15 years ago, I wouldn't be able to help all these people. I wouldn't have written a book. I wouldn't have done anything. I wouldn't have even tried to go into the ministry. I would have never gotten up and preached. I would have never gotten up and taught any class at any conference or anything like that, because I would have said, well, they don't want me. They don't want to hear me. I'm not as good as this one. And I don't preach the way this one preaches. I don't write my books the way so-and-so writes their books. So no one probably wants to hear it. And I wouldn't have been able to, be that person and be that example and, mentor a lot of people now. I would never thought that. I'm like, who wants to be mentored by me? Because I had that stigma that I put on myself, and it was about loving myself, and I'm learning it more and more. I'm not saying that I'm 100% there and I wake up every day, I love Kimberly, she's so wonderful. That's not me. Probably no day do I ever get up and say that. But I learned to connect with other people who understand and love me for where I am. I do have a book coming out either the end of this year, I'm still saying it, or early next year, that is going to be entitled Love Me in My Lane. And that's what this book was going to be entitled. But God revealed it to me. He said, you have all of those quotes out there. They're all out there on social media. I had a ministry business, which I still have, where I do T-shirts and mugs and baseball caps, and flip-flops and scarves and umbrellas, whatever you want. And they actually had all of the quotes. A lot of the quotes that are in the book have already been out there for years. And I didn't know that it was ever going to be a book, but it's on a blanket. People have blankets. They took them to the beach, and people have T-shirts that they're still wearing with my quotes. One of my quotes was, "You can't rain on my parade because I'm already showered with blessings." And so that was out there, but I was able to put it all into one book, get it copywritten, and I understand the legalities of copyright and those types of things, because if someone actually takes one of the quotes from my books and they don't acknowledge me and it's copywritten and they make 2 cents off of it, I can sue them, and I am entitled to 7 times whatever they make. So go ahead and use my stuff. And don't tell me, but if I find out you made a profit on it, I'm going to make 7 times what you make. So, and that came from me 5 years ago, before I even put pen to paper and wrote anything. I was the person that was back there, like I said, the long suffering, the patience. And I'm not saying that things don't happen suddenly for some people. I'm not saying that it's going to take you 5 years. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying for me, that was my journey. And I was able to understand that having that patience and that long suffering, I was back there in 2015. I remember listening to phone calls, how to write a book, and how does copywriting work, and the difference between copywriting and registering and trademark and LLC. I was studying all of that stuff. So I didn't just pop out with a book this year. It was some work. And I definitely want to give credit to my publishing company, who I hooked up with at the end of last year. Come to find out, it was somebody that just saw me say on Facebook last summer, I think I just penned the first words of my book. And I got a reaction. It was a person that I had only become Facebook friends with a few weeks before. Didn't even really know the person. They inboxed me, Facebook Messengered me, and they said, would you like to write a book? Something you said resonated with me. Let's make this happen. We started to talk, found out that our families are connected. They were preaching at my cousin's church, and it was all these things. And then I ended up hooked up with my publishing company, Wealth and Riches Today. The CEO is L. Renee Richardson. And I just was welcomed into this huge family and welcomed into this platform that I would have never had I not stepped out there in August of 2019 and said I wanted to write a book. And so here it is a year later. Last year at this time, there is no way, and I'm going to hold it up again.
There you go.
No way that I would have ever thought that I would have had that, and that it would be in Walmart, that it would be in Target, that it would be in Barnes and Noble and Amazon. So I tell anybody out there for encouragement, not just about me, not just about Tonikia, but that do whatever it is that God told you to do. And he will bless you, and he will bless others for you doing it.
All right. So listen, tell me who or what. We're going to wrap up in just a minute, but I want to know who or what inspires you.
Okay. So definitely first off, my parents, my lovely parents who I cherish and adore. I am blessed to be an only child. And I'll say that because a lot of times, and I think that's a lot of who I am as well. I can't separate that from who I am because I'm super close with them. And I think it is because I'm an only child. So it's always only been me and them. Mm-hmm. And I'm tearing up, and I didn't want to, but they have supported me in any and everything that I have done my whole entire life. So I can go back to, I remember being in the crib. I have a really good memory. I get that from my dad. And so I remember all the times that they sacrificed for me. My mom, I was in a program up here called Metco, where they bust kids from the inner city, even though we didn't live in the inner city, but we were in the Boston proper, and they bust minority children out to the suburbs, to, you know, predominantly white schools. And my mother would drive me every day from the 6th grade to my senior year in high school to a bus stop that was about 15 minutes away from us. And my bus stop was really early. It was like 6 in the morning. And my mother got up every day for 6 years and drove me there. That's love. And picked me up every day.
Absolutely.
My father, I always say that my father and my grandfather, I think I got my, I would say my wit from, and my way of, you know, taking words and manipulating them and putting a spin on them, you know, so like a popular sayings. My father, and then my grandfather, the late suffragan Bishop Joseph H. Oliver Sr., he had sermons that were a lot like the titles and things in my book and the quotes. So he was actually fortunate enough. He never saw the book because he died in 2016. But in 2015, like I told you, I had all these quotes out there, and, you know, on blankets and postcards and different things. So my grandparents' house was filled with my quotes. And so people would come over, and my grandfather would say, have you seen my granddaughter's quote? You know, so his favorite quote was, "Your 2 cents will never outweigh the favor of God." And he loved it. I had a picture of like 2 pennies, you know, together. And so, you know, I glean from that. You know, I glean from my mother's ability to just put paragraphs and sentences together. And not just because she's a teacher, because that's just who she is. Grammar is her thing. And I mean, she can pump out a letter. And I mean, it's just like fit for, I really think she could write for presidents, and she could write their speeches, because she just has that ability. And I never thought that I got that, because I thought that, you know, I inherited the architecture and the engineering side, you know, from my father and my grandfather. And I always thought, well, I'm not a writer. I don't know how to write. But I found that I did. And once I did, I owned it, and I moved on. So I would say it's my parents, and definitely Jesus.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think that is a parent's biggest accomplishment, to know the love of their child, to know the respect of their child, to know that they raised a child that really looks up to them. Because I was going to ask you who your hero is, but I already know who it is. You know, you just described them. And so that's a blessing, and it's a beautiful thing. And I was telling my mom the other day, I said, your family is a model family of what love looks like. And when I see you all together, and I see how you interact with one another, it just is so beautiful, and it's like a comforting feeling to know that love is out there. And so, you know, that's what we all need to aspire for. So thank you for being that inspiration. Thank you for being the light in dark places. You know, keep shining. Don't ever let anybody take that from you. And, you know, I hope and pray that a year from now, or 6 months from now, or whenever your next book comes out, that we can get back on here and talk about that. And maybe even sooner, you know, you might have some other things that you haven't got all out that you want to come back and talk about. And we can talk about God all day. We can talk about Jesus all day, and the Word, and that can never get old. So you are welcome anytime. And I just, before we leave, I want you to stay on here, but before we get off, I'm going to close out, and I want you to stay. But before we leave, I just want you to leave us with some words of wisdom, so some Kimfrimations that we can just take with us and just put in our soul and be better by.
Sure. Well, I just literally opened up the page. I didn't even pick any of these out, but I'm going to just read a few. So I opened up to page 54, and it says, once you fully surrender, you will not have to live your life as a pretender.
Ha!
And I'll give you just a tiny bit of, you know, I'll expound on it just a little bit for quickly. And that one came from, I was seeing, and it was partly me too, that there's parts of you that you don't fully surrender to God. And so you are living your life as a pretender because you haven't surrendered to him so that you can fully be everything that he wants you to be. And it's a trust issue. So you don't trust that if you fully surrender, then you leave it all out. It's all out. You know, you're honest. Everything is all out. You know how they say you put everything on the table, everything's there. Everything you have is all on that table. So at that point, you've surrendered. But when you don't do that, you're just a pretender because you haven't fully surrendered. So you're fake, is what I was saying. So let me just, I'll open up to one more page and see what this one says. Sometimes you don't realize how close you are to your farthest dream. And that came from me just realizing some things in my life and some blessings in my life and things. It's so close, but it might be like your wildest, farthest dream that you never thought of, but you're close to it. You are so close to it. You know, don't give up because you're that close. You could be like right around the corner. You don't even know it, but you don't want to give up on it because you are close to it. So I will leave you with those two.
Amen. So how do we get your book? Where can your book be purchased at? How can we support you? How can we pour into your ministry?
Thank you so much for allowing me to even be on this platform and, you know, to mingle my voice with yours. And you can get it on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon, if you have an Amazon account, Amazon Prime, or just regular Amazon, if you type in Kimberly J. Oliver and then type in 101 God-given Kimfrimations. So as soon as you type in Kimberly J. Oliver and 101, it will pop up. Same thing on Walmart, Target, Barnes & Noble. You can get it there.
Okay. All righty. Now, one last thing. Where is your business located, and how do we order your items with the quotes on it?
Oh, sure. So I have two websites now. I have not fully launched. I actually have KimberlyJOliver.com, which is under construction, but that's going to be launched very, very shortly this fall. And then I also have a website that I'm retiring, but that was a big part of me before the book came out. And that was ask-KimberlyOliver.com. So it was ask and then a dash, KimberlyOliver.com. And that was started actually 10 years ago when I had no book, no quotes, no nothing. God told me in the middle of the night, create this website and it's going to generate revenue for you. And it did. So it's a little outdated, but if you get in contact with me there's a box I know there for like contact me by email, and I could definitely help you out with that. And also a better place to reach me is on Facebook. You can follow me. It's Kimberly J. Oliver, and you can follow me. And I do post T-shirts and things like that. From time to time, and you can definitely get in contact with me and I'll hook you up with it.
All right. Well, that's awesome. For some reason, I'm having some technical difficulties on this side, so I couldn't get that last one up. There it goes.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Because
actually, that one, I apologize. That one is just KimberlyOliver.com. So the first one you have is correct. The ask, yep.
Okay.
The first one is correct. Okay. No problem.
Okay. All right.
It'll probably come up anyway.
God bless you. I love you. Tell your mom and dad I said thank you for having you and allowing you to come on this show. Because I know that they gave you their blessing. I know your dad and your mom were so happy. And I know they're watching. And yep, there goes your dad. I see him out there.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. Thank you for meeting my beautiful cousin, Kimberly J. Oliver. Go get her book, 101 God-Given Information, and just support her and her ministry. And know that when God puts someone before you, He's giving you something that you can hold on to. And today, I feel like He gave us a blessing with your word and with your wisdom and just with your openness and just how candid you are and how real you are.
Thank you.
Sometimes people think Christians are uptight and they're all this or that, and there's a stigma about Christians. But you know what, girl, we can hang out. You are my girlfriend, you are my cousin, and we can do good things together. So I salute you and everybody out there today. Thank you for tuning in. Join me back tonight from 6 to 8 p.m. I'm sorry, 6 to 7 p.m. when I will have Peggy Lewis on. She is going to be representing the Human Library. They're going to go to Human Library next Saturday from 3 to 6 p.m. And that's going to be live as well. So you can tune into that. But tonight she's going to be on to talk about it and to help you to know how to get there. So stay tuned for that later on tonight. And until then, remember, you were created for a purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you.